After months of soaring prices, cocoa markets have taken a sharp downturn. New York cocoa futures have fallen to their lowest level since February 2024, driven in part by signs of improving global supply. Still, with La Niña conditions expected to return, weather patterns could once again play a decisive role in shaping production and price trends. I'm Johanna Bota, and joining me to break down what's behind these market moves and what to watch in the months ahead is Rafael Borges, market intelligence analyst at StoneX, Brazil. Welcome, Rafael. Good to see you.
Thanks, Joanna. Pleasure being here with StoneX TV.
So, we've seen cocoa prices come off their highs after months of bullish momentum. What do you think is causing this pullback, and what are you picking up in terms of how the market's feeling right now?
Yeah, so that is a very important question right now. We've seen since the start of November a really big downturn in the cocoa prices. We are now nearing the $5,000 per ton in New York futures prices, and we still have a lot of things going on. So it's actually reflects a trend that has been going on for a few months. There's the start of the 25-26 season was in October, and the start of the season was a little bit delayed. So that was mainly because due to increased rains in Ivory Coast, which is the main production region of cocoa globally, and that really delayed the drying and delivery process of cocoa at Ivorian ports. But since the start of November, those indications has started to come above what we expect from what we saw in the 24-25 harvest. So that is the main reason why we see this really big downturn right now. But it also reflects a longer term trend. So since August this year, which was the last peak of prices in 2025, when we still had prices nearing $9,000 or $10,000 per ton, we saw really bad weather during July. We saw a drier season in Ivory Coast, but since then, rains really picked up, and we also saw other fundamental factors playing in. So we saw a lot of production coming in from Ecuador. We see a record harvest in Ecuador, nearing 570,000 tons this year. It was really impressive increase of more than 40% from the previous year. And we also saw in October data coming in from grinding associations in Europe, Asia, North America, and Brazil also coming in really below expectations. So it really reflects a downward trend in the consumption of cocoa, and also a substitution of cocoa products for the final consumer. So all of these trends really play into the really big downturn that we've seen in prices in the last few weeks, but also in the last few months.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about the Ivory Coast and Ghana because they produce almost two-thirds of the world's cocoa. How is the new crop shaping up in West Africa, and what key indicators should the market be watching as we head into the new season?
Yeah, so that is the most important region of the world when we talk about cocoa. So, as we mentioned, we saw a little bit of dry weather during July, but the main rain seasons in Ivory Coast and Ghana that goes from May to June, and also from September to October, they have two main rainfall peaks seasonally there. Both of those saw favorable rains, so much more favorable than what we saw in 2024. The weather scenario really shows that weather conditions foster a big improvement for the conditions of the 25-26 crop, both for the intercrop and the main crop that we already started and have been seeing bigger indications. So mostly a more favorable scenario. It is also benefited by the La Nina formation, and we also see that we should see since 2023, we saw much bigger prices, and that has been driving a lot of players to invest in treatment of their crops, in buying fertilizers. So we should see a recovery in the main producing region, although they are still hindered by a lot of structural factors that should be only overcome in the long run. So aging of trees, spread of viral diseases such as the CSSBD, the swollen shoot disease of cocoa, These are all factors that still limit the recovery of the production, but we should see a better crop for these two countries next year.
Okay. And I want to go back and touch on La Nina because conditions possibly might be returning soon. What kind of impact could we see on cocoa production around the world, but particularly in key producing countries?
Yeah, so mostly the La Nina tends to mean good news for cocoa production globally. Most of cocoa production countries are near the equator line, and most of them have a more favorable rains during La Nina years. Also, a characteristic for cocoa, which has more than 60% of its production in West Africa, is the Harmattan effect. So, Harmattan is an event of dry and strong winds that blow from the Sahara Desert to Ivory Coast and Ghana, mostly during December, January, and February. And during La Nina years, this event tends to be milder, so it poses less risk to the production. And because of that, we should see a more favorable scenario also for the 25-26 harvest. So La Nina tends to be a more favorable scenario for production. There are some exceptions. So, for example, Ecuador and Peru tend to see a drier weather during La Nina years. Their rainy season starts from February to March next year. So if we still have a La Nina scenario, it could show a drier scenario there, but still, these countries have been seeing a lot of increased production the last few years. So we're not that worried about that yet, but it should be something to look out for. But mostly for the global production, it is a very optimistic weather scenario.
You mentioned Peru and Ecuador, but what about Brazil? What does La Nina mean for Brazil?
Yeah, so in Brazil, the cocoa production areas are located to the north of the country, mostly in the states of Bahia and Pará. Both of these states, during La Nina years, they tend to see an increase of rainfall. This rainfall, of course, should be favorable for the development of the 25-26 crop, but of course, there are some worries, some of them related to the spread of fungal diseases that could be influenced by the excess of rains, but mostly we should see a more favorable development for the 25-26 crop, which is also really influenced by the increase of investments here in Brazil for the cocoa sector. At least since 2023, we have been seeing a lot of increasement in buying of fertilizers, treatment of the cocoa crops, and also expansion of another areas in different parts of the country, which has been driven by this increase in prices since 2023. So all of that leads us to believe in a strong Brazilian crop in 25-26, and also we forecast that the Brazilian production could almost double until 2030.
And one last thing, Rafael, before we let you go, as we head into the new crop cycle, what are the main factors that you'll be watching for that could shape cocoa prices as we move into the new year?
Yeah, so for 2026, we still forecast that fundamentals will still be pressuring. Of course, a lot of that has already been priced in the prices that we have right now. But the monitoring of the crop is going to be very important. We of course expect have a high expectation of the supply performance in the next year. But I think the really important thing to notice will be the demand. So since the 2022-23 harvest, the global grindings of cocoa has reduced by almost 400,000 tons. The production since then has really reduced, but it has been catching up faster than the demand. The demand we started to see really go down this year, and it should be. We forecast that it could be stabilizing by next year, and if we see an increase in demand next year, we could see prices going to be lower or higher, depending if the demand accompany or not the increase of the production globally.
Okay. Rafael, always good to catch up. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you to our viewers for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.